So I want to welcome everybody to Live Living Update. And Live Living Update is a format of communication that we began, back in the spring of 2020 when COVID emerged. And of course, we have moved beyond those COVID-related topics with our noted researchers and scientists around the country. And this year, we've transitioned to topics that matter to us right here on campus. And my thanks to all of you, the parents, for suggesting that we devote a show to this very topic tonight. And we're going to pay attention to the whole child. And it's a topic, as you know, we call social emotional learning. In a moment, I'll be introducing our school counselors who will help walk us through the topic. But first, I want to share a few tidbits from Levine and what's going on here. Let me start with some real big news. Now, if you haven't heard already, or perhaps haven't seen it on social media, our middle school robotics teams competed in New York City just yesterday. And Levine sent 3 robotics teams there on Sunday for a big national competition, 117 robotics teams in total. And get this, out of 117 teams, our 3 robotics teams all placed in the top 5. We took 3rd place, and our 2 other teams tied for 4th place. And that's pretty amazing. You know, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that Levine Academy, we are a national powerhouse in robotics. So hats off to our team and to Jackie Kirkendall and her fellow coaches. Fantastic showing. Next week, our 6th grade class has been preparing for a while to embark on our first ever civil rights trip. They're leaving on Monday, going across the South. And they will visit the actual locations where the significant historical moments took place in the fight for social justice in this country and equality in America. So that begins next Monday. And our 8th graders, many of you know, their mission to Israel will go forward in early May. And since I'm on the middle school topic, I might as well mention that our middle school snapshot for 4th grade families will take place this Thursday night at 6:30. And one other sports update from this afternoon on the Levine soccer field. Our 4th through 6th grade soccer team defeated Wesley Prep, get this, in soccer 12-3. So great victories to report to you tonight. This Friday morning, our 3rd grade will be doing their Hagigat HaSafa, a celebration of the Hebrew language learning here. And Eclipse Day is coming up. This is where my eclipse glasses. I want to show you those. These are my eclipse glasses. Everybody will have those. And so all we can do is hope for the clouds to go away and to come back another day. We want to have this experience. Our 2nd graders on Monday, they'll be at the Arboretum. And there's so much more to report. But as everyone knows, Passover is really soon upon us. And if you're wondering, gee, how do I lead a Passover Seder this year? You need do nothing else but turn to your Levine kid, and I'm even saying your early childhood student, because they know what to do. They'll take the lead because those EC classes, believe me, they are on top of it. So they're all ready to go for Passover. So let me start with my first introduction. I want to introduce Andy Blum to you. Has proudly served as Levine's early childhood and lower school counselor for 20 years. And that's through a partnership with Jewish Family Services. She has celebrated, but she's been celebrating her learning support role for so long, and we have celebrated her for all those years. And she's just been such an invaluable resource for all of us, faculty, students, and parents. She's not only a dedicated professional, an alum of the school, but a parent of 2 Levine alums and a current Levine parent. So she's got a unique perspective to share with us. So thanks for joining us, Andy. I'm going to introduce and bring on board Susie Hacker. She's dedicated 4 years in serving as Levine's middle school counselor, and she plays a vital role in working with 6th grade through 8th grade classes, providing social emotional lessons to help students navigate their pivotal stage in their lives. She's a valued resource and for all of us. She's a proud parent of 3 Levine Academy graduates, and she brings a wealth of personal and professional experience to her role within our community. So as I go through the Q&A, certainly parents, you can deposit one of your questions if you have one, and we're happy to use one of your questions. Just use the Q&A feature down below and enter your question, and there's going to be a segment toward the end of our show where I will pull from your questions as well. So I want to start with Andy. And Andy, explain for us what it means, what this term means, particularly the social emotional learning, and what it means for preschoolers and for lower school students. Just help all of us understand and get a grasp of this topic.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. And thanks for that introduction. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Social and emotional learning is something that is really near and dear to both mine and Susie's heart. And I think the best way to describe it, I'm going to start with like a story about that happened to my family about social emotional learning. So this is from my husband. He's an attorney, and one day, it was actually a couple years ago, I'm in the kitchen, I'm making lunch for my daughter, and he comes in and he says to me, I used your social emotional learning. So what you talking about? And he said, well, he's an attorney, and he was working on a merger between 2 companies, and he's talking to a CEO on the phone, and he wants to draft the agreement between the companies, and she says to him, I need to tell you what happened. And he says, I don't need the information, I just need you to answer these questions, I can draft the agreement. She, no, I just have to tell you this one thing. He's like, you do know I charge by the hour? And she's still wanting to hear what, she's still wanting to tell him what's happening. So he said, he is married to me. So finally he stops talking and he listens to what she has to say. And when she's done, he says to her, it sounds like you're really mourning the loss of your company. And she was quiet. And he says, then she said, yeah, I guess I am. And then she could finally give him the information he needed. She needed to be validated. She needed to be heard. And once she was, then he could do his work. And kids are like that too. So, I was thinking of an example in lower school where we had a kid, this was a few years ago, but the teacher noticed he wasn't doing his math. She's teaching his math lesson. He's totally not present in the classroom. And he's a good math student. So at the end, she goes to him and she says, to the child, what's going on, bud? And he said his parents were divorced and he had just gotten a new iWatch and he'd left it in his dad's car. And he was worried about this watch. And while he's thinking about this watch, no learning can take place. So social emotional learning is really addressing the kid. It's understanding where they are, and helping them be self-aware, have self-control, interpersonal skills, and then social emotional learning. The research is vast on this. It shows it includes schools that have SEL programs. They're better with academic achievement, positive behavior, healthier life choices. They can function. I am passionate about it because I feel like if you don't have that, you cannot learn. Like if you can't.
Andy, I want to just follow up, and that was a great overview, for us with someone either adult in one instance and a child in another instance you mentioned, that express their feelings, express what was going on. Is manage, this concept of managing emotions and maybe just, really being good at expressing feelings. Isn't that something? I mean, I hear this sometimes from parents that, that's really an adult skill. I mean, our early childhood kids or lower school kids, can they be nurtured and developed with this in mind, with social emotional learning in mind, and these types of skills?
100%. I mean, I think kids are sometimes better at it
Mhm.
because they are not colored by life necessarily. So it's rudimentary, and that's what they feel. I feel angry. I feel sad. They can express how they feel. And so we talk about it. If you can name how you feel, then you can tame how you feel, right? Then you can say, "Hey, I feel angry or upset." And in conscious discipline, they talk about the brain. And so when you're in this part of your brain, you don't think clearly. You have to get to this part of your brain to think clearly. So you still have those big feelings, but you want to get to the place where you're not too sad or too angry or too overwhelmed that you cannot function. And so that's really what we're teaching those kids. Life happens. You're going to feel these things. How do we manage that? And absolutely every child will tell you, I'm sad, I'm angry. I mean, if they know those feeling words, they can identify it. I even think probably better than a lot of adults because it's primitive. They don't have all this stuff coloring it.
It's important to know what children in their innocence actually, can really come out with, and how we need to be attentive to that. Thank you for that, Andy. I want to turn to Susie so I know that maybe social emotional learning, Susie, is has a different ring, and maybe it encompasses a few other different developmental needs when you get to the middle school. Can you talk about what that is? How can we understand what this means for the middle school students?
Absolutely. And thanks for having me, and happy to be here tonight. Middle schoolers, if you can remember yourself as a middle schooler, not you particularly, Tom, but anyone out there, it is a challenging time of life. And it provides a lot of unique opportunities for us to impact kids in a very positive way during that time. At the same time, when some of them are really struggling, developmentally, they are beginning to understand and experience the world in this crossover between being little kids and being teens, and managing a lot more independence, both from their parents and from their teachers. And they are having to navigate social experiences and conflict much more on their own than they ever have before. We've talked sometimes about particularly that transition where we have fifth grade middle schoolers, new middle schoolers, that it's a challenge for them because the teacher can't come in all and immediately put kids together the way that's acceptable for lower school kids to take on. And kids have to start to do that themselves. So knowing that they have all this on them, we really focus SEL, social emotional learning for middle schoolers, by focusing on problem solving. How do you solve problems? Really building on the format that Andy's talking about with managing emotions, but then what are you going to do with that? Self-regulation. You can't explode. They have all their hormones starting and raging, and how do they handle that on a day-to-day basis? Impulse control and empathy. And we really focus a lot on empathy. That is part of a strong focus at Levine, being a no place for hate, of really bully prevention and helping kids understand each other and work through conflict in a positive way.
Oh, Susie, thank you for that. I wanted to follow up with you, Susie, just with a question that I sometimes hear, which is really that the attention that either a teacher or even counselors can give to this area of developmental need, uh, does that take away time? I know that there's always an anxiousness about time devoted, and are we devoting enough time to core academics and Judaic studies? And yet, how is it that is it both direct or indirect ways? Are there ways that we can uh, teach or inculcate social emotional skills in a way that does not detract from time?
For sure. And what I would answer is that, I mean, studies do show that providing an opportunity for social emotional learning definitely improve academics and reduce negative social behaviors. That is empirically shown. However, you're gonna eat up that time either way. So are we going to use the time dealing with issues that arise because kids aren't able to manage and handle? Or are we going to use the time in a proactive way, helping kids learn and grow in a positive way? So I think you're kind of giving up a certain amount of time either way. We just want to harness it in a particularly positive way. Particularly teachers on it without losing any time, focusing on a really positive classroom environment that's supportive and constructive. That basic level is social emotional development for kids, where they feel like they can be challenged, that they can make mistakes, that they can grow. That takes no extra time. That's just our teachers working hard at creating that climate. So that is a given all the time. And then we do take a little time to add in, some icing to our cake to really sprinkle it and help kids really formulate what's going on with them.
Great. No, thank you, Susie. I'm going to now just turn a question back to Andy. And Andy, I want to hear from you if you feel that is there any change these days? When I say these days, these years, I guess, with in the family dynamic that makes the matter of emotional support and social support for kids much more prominent, much more of a necessity today in our early childhood and lower school years. I just want to hear from you. Is this something always there, or is there something in the environment that's a little bit different, or what is it about our world today, or the family dynamic?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's hard to know. It's always shifting and changing. We're also coming off of COVID. And so, I start with the EC3s when I go into the classroom up till 4th grade. And a lot of these babies are COVID babies, and they were born in a time of anxiety, when we didn't know what was going on in our world. And that definitely changes the dynamic at home. It's huge. The research shows that kids learn from parents, they learn from role models, and how their environment is definitely impacted by that. And I do feel there is a level of anxiety that is coming in with our kids. And so, but it's the same kind of, we try to create an environment that is safe and secure. I mean, we know the brain functions optimally when children feel safe and secure. And so that's what we strive for. But yes, and it's definitely different. COVID influenced our kids. It influenced our world. We still think about that, and how we do that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that context of what these children are experiencing and our families are experiencing just a few years away from COVID. I want to ask Susie a question, a similar question. What are some of the matters that might be plaguing, or the hazards out there, or the challenges that are specific to today's children, in the middle school, that might not have been around, 20 or 30 years ago, that maybe us parents don't always take time to recognize, what things are different today. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's the environment like?
For sure. I think middle schoolers, teens today have a really hard road. They have a lot of unique challenges that we never had growing up. It's always been, as I mentioned before, a challenging time. You're growing emotionally, physically, developmentally. There's all of that is going on. At the same time, most of our middle schoolers have smartphone technology at their hands and social media accessibility. And what that brings into their life is sometimes positive and sometimes negative. It definitely is a lot more information than parents probably want to give them. They're being inundated with concepts about body image, about pop culture, about sexualization, drug use. I mean, things that we probably could have really protected our kids from in a previous times a little bit longer, they now have exposure to. And in addition, just on a day-to-day, even if everything is shut down and they are just using it to connect with friends, that's also a lot of pressure of who's getting together, what's happening. When I was growing up, if there was something going on in a social event and I wasn't invited, I didn't know. And if I knew, maybe it was 4 days later and everything was passed and done. I didn't see it in real time. I didn't see that I wasn't included. I didn't see people posing and looking wonderful together. We all know that social media, people only post the best and the brightest of their pictures. And that's true for kids too. And they're really impacted by that. A lot of kids are really hyper-focused on getting likes, about being viewed on a TikTok or on Instagram. They don't use Facebook anymore. That's just for the old people, but they really do focus on that, about and finding value and self-worth that way. And we did not used to do that. We used to find self-worth a little bit more internally. And now we're looking for these external validations all the time. We also have parents that are, I think, some of COVID and some of just generationally are very involved in their kids' lives. And so that has a lot of pros. We're so excited to have parents around and invested in their children, but it's sometimes challenging for kids, for middle schoolers, to gain independence when they have, that whole helicoptering parent, I think, is much more seen in the current generation than in what our parents were raising us in. And our kids have much less face-to-face social interaction. So the social skills that we really want kids to have, they're not just picking up by going outside and playing in the yard, or picking up with friends. Everything is pretty scheduled, and that creates a little bit of a gap that we need to fill in social emotional skills.
No, good. Thank you for that. Was a whole host of factors that middle schoolers face today that I think is unique to our times. That's for sure. I'm going to ask a question that's for both of you. I'm going to start with Andy first on this one. I know, look, counselors and a school counselor, and the role that you play, both of you, it's not a role where you sit down and hang out by a desk and wait for a child to come to you, and wait for a problem to happen. You two are both proactively involved in getting into the classroom and doing what you do. I wonder if you can just share a few things, like as an example of what you do proactively when you go into classrooms, and just give us a little sampling of some of the topics, or some of the methods, or some of the approaches you're taking with kids when you go into the classroom. So obviously that's going to mean something different for you, Andy, than Susie. But Andy, I'll start with you.
Okay, sure. And both Susie and I use research-based programs when we go into the classroom. So I get to go into the EC and into the lower school, which they're both very different, and I love it, and I love seeing the littles. And what we talk about is skill for the little ones, skills for learning, growth mindset, goal setting practices. Then we talk about, for the little kids, it can be like, how do you introduce to yourself? How do we listen to somebody? And then we talk about empathy and kindness. What does that mean? How does that look? How do we show somebody, how do we show care and concern for somebody? We definitely talk about emotional management. What do we do if we have a big, strong feeling? And then friendship skills, problem solving, you want the same toy as your friend has, you want to play with somebody and they say no, how do you handle that? That kind of stuff, and also perspective taking. I find with the littles, they see, the world is in terms of them. And so oftentimes they think they've been so wronged, and then you can explain, hey, maybe your friend thought this, or a different way to handle that. We also talk a lot about using their big voice to be assertive. You wanted this. What can you do to get that? You may not grab. You can say, I don't like this, that kind of stuff. And then, if kids have problems, then they come and they talk to me. We can work it out in my office. If anything's going on in their world, that emotional management piece that we talked about in the beginning, that kind of stuff. And then with teachers too, both Susie and I work a lot with helping create an environment that kids can make mistakes, they can learn what's going on. We believe, every behavior there's a reason for. So what's happening that they're behaving this way? So yes, that's kind of what we do.
It's a lot there. Thanks so much for what you do, and I think it's just marvelous that you've got this well-researched approach when you go into the classroom, and it's not just the children, but you're helping our teachers in a big way. I know that. Thank you so much for that. Susie, when you go into middle school, what are some of the topics, or what are some of the things that you bring up that can be helpful to our kids?
So as I was listening to Andy, I thought it's the exact same with just big kid words. I mean, we're really working on the exact same skills. Dealing with conflict, how do they manage strong emotions, solving their problems. We add a little bit in terms of trying to keep them, organized, work on some executive functioning skills, which is really important for them at that age. To do some study skill lessons with them to help them. But it's a lot of the same piece. How do they be assertive in an appropriate way if they don't like what their friend is doing? We just kind of tag on and grow with it and work with a little bit more maturity. So not only do you have to use the correct wording to be assertive, but then what happens if your friend says no? So in lower school and preschool, that's when you can maybe draw on an adult around you very quickly. Whereas when you're in middle school or moving into high school, you have to be a little bit more creative, because they don't want to be a tattletale or running to a teacher all the time. So we're kind of pushing them in the exact same skill set, but just a little bit further, to be a little bit more mature. I mean, it is a gift to be able to have the lessons with them each week, because if they don't feel connected and know us, Andy and I, they're not going to come when they are struggling. So I love getting to know them, seeing how they work in a class environment, how they work together. I do a lot of group activities with them. Sometimes we will do I also use Second Step, which is from Committees of Children, and I will use lessons from there. And then we will usually do some sort of activity. We do a hands-on game or something that kind of demonstrates it. They love that. And I get to see how they're actually working together. What are they doing? Who's getting along with who? And then, when they have issues, I've seen it. I know exactly what's going on. So I love having that face-to-face with them every week. I also try to do some small group times with them so they can come have lunch with me. I try to get to recess, to lunch, to see what's going on in those non-classroom times as well, and also guide the teachers quite a bit. So we're busy.
I know you are. But let's look at the reality here. I mean, we've got a lot of kids in the school. You're looking at 450 kids, and of course we know that counselors themselves, we don't put all the problems just on the counselors, or certainly the counselors cannot solve all the problems. And so I want to ask a question that I know you are aware of very much. What are optimal conditions in the classroom? What are the good qualities, let's say, when teaching, and the kind of teaching that goes on that actually can address or incorporate social emotional understanding and awareness in the classroom. And Andy, you see the you know, our lovely teachers in early childhood and lower school. I'll ask you, what are the conditions and what can teachers do themselves, or when you see the optimal teaching taking place, what does that look like?
Okay, great. Thank you. First of all, like, I think Levine is such an amazing, special place. When we go into the classrooms, Susie and I get, I get a feel for what each class is like. And it's wonderful. I brought actually, something, I asked one of the pre-K teachers if I could borrow, because I thought this was so good. It's a treasure box. And when the kids came at the beginning of the year, she said, I have this most very special treasure box. It's the most important thing that I have in my whole room. It's the thing that I treasure the most. And do you want to know what it is? And she did this whole big thing. And then you open it up, and inside are the kids. So she has a name, and she says, you know, this is a child, because I treasure you. And I treasure each child is in here. And she has each child come up, so that each child is part of this treasure that she's going to keep safe. And that's her job, it's what she treasures the most and what she's going to keep safe. And their job is to keep it that way. So when they come in, even in that beginning, they know that they're in a place where they are treasured. And so that starts it off the day, right? Their kid loves them. Their teacher loves them and is and values who they are. And that's a pre-K class, but I see it even with signs on the door. In this room, you are valued, you are worthwhile. If you go into one of the second grade classes, there's a mirror. They have signs that says, I am enough, I am brave, I am, you know, they have all those different signs on the mirror that the kid can know. So it's safe for them to make a mistake. It's safe for them to learn and to grow. So the teacher creates that in the very beginning. Also, I think I said it before, they understand they're not taking personally if the kid is having a behavior problem. It's, how can I get to you? This is a way we can learn. What needs to happen so this child can learn to the best of their ability. But at the foundation is the connection. And I believe that starts with everything. Once the teacher is connected to the kid will do anything for you. If you look at research and you want to eliminate misbehavior, you start with a connection, because you're less likely to misbehave if you're connected. Like Becky Bailey uses this example with adults. If you're connected to your spouse and you say, hey, go get me a drink of water, they say, sure, I'll get you a drink of water. If you're fighting with them and you're not connected, and they say, give me a drink of water, I'm not getting a drink of water. So, right? It's the same with the kids. And the teachers really build that connection with them. And then the kids want to work for them because they care. And it's that mutual respect and the idea that this is a safe place, that I can make mistakes and I can learn. It's a foundation.
Absolutely. And I want to just echo some of that. When, you know, Andy, you know, us adults, we need those safe places too. And my safe place is to go into one of these classrooms, because I love to walk into classrooms that have the lighting just right. Sometimes they have soft music, and the kids are so focused. And I go, oh my God, now there's conditions. They've got to be just optimal conditions. It's just so heartening to walk into the classroom to see our teachers and making use of this understanding and incorporating that, and really getting the kids going and on task. It's actually a beautiful thing to see. Susie, I mean, in maybe you can describe what an optimal those optimal conditions are in a classroom for middle school. And you know, the kids are different up there in ages, you know, 6th grade through 8th grade, and so what can teachers, or what can those conditions, or what qualities work best, you know, to really connect with these kids?
So teachers always have a different style. Some are, loud, some are not. They have different ways that they like to teach different modalities, but we definitely see some things that are consistent that really help make an optimal learning for middle school. Those are things like routines in the classroom, that the kids are familiar and that they can count on every day, that they know what their expectations are, that they have an opportunity to be independent, that they feel comfortable making mistakes, and that they're going to keep trying, that they can foster that environment. The teacher creates that climate that a kid and student knows it's okay to be me here, and I can push myself a little bit to color out of the lines. When they feel nervous and they don't feel themselves, they don't want to take those chances, and we need them to take those chances to grow. So really, that consistent routine, expectations, and that's why we really kind of try to stick with the rules in middle school. We say, that is your uniform, that is your, that's the reason, so that they have this dependency, that they know these are the things that I'm counted on to do. This is my responsibility. And then this is what I can count on from the teachers as well. Teachers can really help. We focus a lot on group work in middle school. That's definitely something they need going into high school, so that as they age in middle school, we focus on that more, and teachers can certainly help guide them in how to work in groups. I help them with that skill set too. So some of those pieces are unique to middle school, but we really just need that very strong, consistent routine of for a child to feel supported and loved.
No, beautiful, beautiful. I recognize that, and it's so palpable when you see that happening in whether it's out, a coach talking to a team during a timeout in a tense game, or in the classroom, or whatever it might be. And I want to ask Andy and Susie, there's a matter, or I should say, in our school's mission. We talk about Jewish values, and we can really, identify those like kavod and kindness and empathy and justice. And I think this is more of a, I guess if you're going to split up this term social emotional, I'm going to focus on social. And how is it, Andy, that how can we help children, young children, to really sort of get out of themselves? It sounds like a real adult thing to do, to practice empathy. What is it about, optimal social and emotional learning that can help nurture this facet of empathy in young children? How does that look?
Yeah, no, it is, and it's hard because some kids are inherently more empathetic. Empathy is a skill that you learn. Also, kids are generally egocentric. The world is supposed to be about them, and you're asking me to look at somebody else. So when we do that, it's in our lessons, look at their faces. How do you think they're feeling? Oftentimes with our lesson, I will show them, how do you think this little boy feels? Or if we're talking, if I'm reading a story, asking that question, how would you feel? How do they feel? What could we do differently? And just, kind of developing that. But actually with the littles, we look at faces. How does this is sad, this is upset. How do you think that made them feel? And what can we do? And also for them to, for the kids to say, this made me feel, or I felt sad. And giving them that power too. But yeah, empathy is hard. But it makes them better friends. And coming in from that side too, I know Susie and I, when we talk to the kids, they want to have friends. And if you want to have friends, you need to behave in a way that will foster that. So if you are unkind and you say unkind things to them, then they're not going to want to play with you. So we do have to say kind things to our friends. They get it.
No, that's great. I think that's right. And I do see how teachers will intervene on something and guide, children gently toward the right type of supportive social response. It's fascinating to see this happen. Susie, in the middle school, it might be happening in a different way, but
Can I add one more thing?
Oh, sure, please.
Sorry. I was gonna say also it's to give them the best of intention. So intent is huge. And when I'm dealing with kids and some teachers are truly gifted at this, they give them the best of intent. They may not have known. You didn't know that when you did this, it would have hurt his feelings. But look at him, it did. So we can't do that. So instead of shaming or reprimanding or getting angry, we're using it as a teaching mode. I'm sure you wouldn't mean to ever hurt someone's feelings, but you did. So next time, this is what I need you to do. And you actually are teaching them that skill. Sorry. Okay.
No, please. Thank you. Thank you for that. And Susie, in the middle school, what is, teaching, we probably the words like inclusivity come in a little bit more prominently in classroom teaching and matters of empathy and thinking of the other and getting out of our own. How does that look in the middle school, and where does that happen in I'm not saying specifically in the curriculum, but really when what does it look like when it's happening well?
So it's again very similar. I mean, we don't wake up as Mother Teresa, right? It's actually, I think that's a popular thing that, oh, this kid is so empathetic and that's how they were just made. And occasionally that happens, but it is really a skill that we focus and look at and try to develop with our middle schoolers. And sometimes it's a challenge, developmentally, they're in that same egocentric kind of space of this is about me and I gotta make sure I'm okay before I make sure somebody else is okay. And that's not inherently a bad way to look at the world, as long as they make room for others as well. So we do the same kind of thing. It starts with being able to identify your emotions and other people's emotions. What does that look like? How does that actually translate on a day-to-day basis? We try to put it into action. We require the middle school students to do mitzvah projects, to do social action, to help each other on a regular basis. And we often do learning pairs, not just for academic reasons, but to help develop social development, empathy, and to help kids teach and learn from each other in different ways. And I think sometimes parents don't see that whole piece of why was my child paired with this one? Well, sometimes they can learn in ways that are not just the math on the page. And so we want that piece to happen both, instructionally, what we're actually saying to the kids, and we have high expectations for them in that way. And then also non-verbally on a day-to-day, how they're interacting with each other. So we have, the kids strive for National Junior Honor Society, to work on those things that's required in how they act and how they, not just their grades, but how they respond and work with the world around them. So we're trying to help them see what it looks like in action, but also learning that skill set and really have that perspective taking from other people.
Fantastic. I want to remind our parents that in the chat, if you click on the chat, you can see a couple of links that we provided to you. One link is a short video. It's less than 3 minutes. It gives you sort of the basics of social emotional learning in a simple and understandable format. And then there's a much more expansive research paper done by a large team of researchers at Harvard's Graduate School of Education, and a big project that was funded by the Wallace Foundation on building social emotional skills. So that you can download that, you can click in, and then you can see where the download button is on that click. But I just have one more question I'm going to ask Andy and Susie to close out the show, and that is, what can we do? And you can choose which, which grouping you'd like to talk about or focus on, like teacher education or parent education, because this is a matter not about the school counselor. It's not a topic that's just about what the school does and what they put forth in the curriculum. This is really about a home and school partnership and how we can really help children. So, I mean, do you have some ideas or some thoughts about maybe what we could do in terms of educating, whether that's about parents or even us teachers and school people? And so I'll turn to you first, Andy, for that question.
Wow, that's a hard question. I would say that, partnering with the school is huge. Communication is big. And I would say, with the family and the home, the most thing is to understand yourselves first, because having composure or having a self-awareness or having an understanding of really what social emotional learning is can help everybody, and help your child. When you are self-regulated, when you practice being a good human, then that translates down to your kid. And so, that's what I think. Also, I welcome phone calls from parents. I know Susie does as well. Anything that's going on, we're happy to learn. But yeah, I would say as grown-ups, parents and teachers and the counselors, we hold the reins, and so we model for the kids, and that's
Right.
where it starts.
Beautiful. Susie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say it really is that piece of giving the best of intentions, that we are partners together with parents, and we really see that. I think teachers really see that. We are all in the business of growing the best Levine graduates that we can, and that takes a village. It really does. So we want to partner. The learning support team is that Andy and I are both a part of, are working on lunch and learn sessions that are interest of parents that we can have. We have done some outreach this year. We've done a cyber safety piece for parents, and we'd really like to expand what does no place for hate mean on a day-to-day level for our parents and for our kids. We talk about it at school all the time, and I'm not sure it always makes its way home. So we want to kind of nurture that partnership. We have such a unique perspective at school that we're so thrilled to have, with this bird's eye view of what's going on. When the kids go home, they have their day from their perspective. And I feel fortunate, and I know the teachers do too, that we get to see it all. We get to kind of see what they're doing when you're not around. We're your spies, the parent spies. So we, if there are any ways that we can partner, we can pair, we can provide things that you are interested in. I know Andy and I are both interested in making that more accessible for parents, so that parents feel like they're growing with us and with their kids as they grow through Levine.
Beautiful. I just want to end here by thanking Andy Blum, early childhood, lower school counselor, Susie Hacker, our middle school counselor. Thanks for your wisdom, your heart, your investment, your time, and all that you bring to our children, and our faculty and staff, and of course our families, and working with everybody in this endeavor to help grow the whole child here at Levine. I also want to thank those behind the scenes in tonight's show. I want to thank Yael Tweedo and Courtney Hensel, who have been our producers behind the scenes. Thank them. And I want to thank all of you, our parents in the Levine community, for tuning in to Live Levine Update.